whenever you use words, an
You
agreed
still
upon
haven't-
human. Stop interrupting. An agreed upon human construct of a word being conceptual is not the same as time being conceptual. That's dumb. So you guys brought up an apple, right? Well, you can go physically touch an apple. You brought up velocity. Well, you can physically experience velocity. You can physically experience a change in speed, i.e. acceleration. You can physically experience these things. You do not have a physical interaction with time. It is a
You do.
quantification method.
I'll provide two sources in which you can physically experience time at a different rate. You ready?
Yeah, please enlighten me.
But
Why don't you just say what they are?
in the meantime, I have a question for you. How are you gonna quantify the period between two events?
Well, we've come up with an agreed upon human construct to quantify it, but quantification does not equate to physicality. It's very simple.
So an event is happened right now, and another event is happened in 5 minutes after. How are you gonna count it?
Well, we've come up with a quantification method called time, but quantification does not equate to physicality.
This time can be distorted.
Like miles per hour.
That's again a quantification methodology, so that doesn't mean that there's physicality within time. Are you guys this lost?
No,
But
no.
in relation to physical things, I mean,
I
if there
guess-
were no physical things, that we would have no relation to time, would we?
Well, we've come up with a quantification method called time, right? It isn't physical. If we had said that a minute was 120 seconds, did time physically change? No. We just had a different. Why are you interrupting so much?
That
What's your
doesn't
fucking
make-
point? I
that
want you to
doesn't
get to
make
the fucking point. Get to
I'll
the
get to the
fucking point.
The
Calm down, man.
quantification doesn't
Jeez,
change
Louis.
reality with it.
We'll get to the point.
We
We'll
understand
get
that.
to the point once you guys are intellectually honest enough to get through the first
Time
part.
is a concept. What the
Right,
fuck?
so-
Move on.
Okay, thank you. Calm down,
Here
man.
you go.
So,
two links showing experimentation.
how about you just say what it is? How about you just say what it
And
is?
things experiencing time at different rates, experiments, and validation.
Oh yeah, how about you explain what it is?
How about you talk like a baby? That's what we want to
And
hear.
it's the same way you explain the Princeton paper of 254 pages as it's just a concept. So here's
Dude,
the
it's-
experimentation with less pages, and I'll respond the same way you did. Why don't
Okay,
you
so
take
I
the read?
already know
Why
what
don't
it could
you
be. So
read it?
no,
I'm
is
gonna
it
respond
atomic?
the same way
It's
that you
atomic
responded to
clocks.
us with your
Is it an atomic clock?
No.
Okay, so how do they experience time dilation then?
What they experienced, what they did in the experiment is essentially found that these particular particles have a radioactive decay. So because of this decay being constant, they imparted different speeds at which it traveled. Because of these different speeds, they had different decays, essentially
Right.
changing their clocks. if you will.
So the rate of decay.
Right, the rate of time that they experience.
No. That's a rate of decay, to be specific,
Right,
right?
so
The
that's
decay of
basically the
It
same
really
thing as
is a rate of decay.
The
is a
particles
clock.
experience. The particles were sentient and experienced the concept. Is that your argument?
So the decay that they experience
Sounds
is a
like
clock
his
and
argument.
constant, but they change with different speeds that they experience.
You mean
So
the
you
rate
change
of
the time
decay
based
changes based on how fast it moves?
Mhm.
Okay, so that doesn't make time physical. The rate
No.
of decay changed based on its movement. We're talking about the quantification of the rate of decay using time and what time is. Time is an agreed upon human construct that we've come up with. It's conceptual, it's abstract. We agreed 60 seconds is in a minute. And if we had said 120 seconds in a minute, then that rate of decay and how it was quantified would have been different. The
No, it
actual
wouldn't have.
quantification is
The
purely.
rate of decay would have been the same no matter what.
I said the
With
rate
the-
of decay and how it's quantified would be different.
You didn't have to interrupt him to say that, dude.
The quantifications are human concepts, but
Thank you.
you have to have, you cannot have cause and effect without there being time. So
This is a
I
great
don't know
topic.
how you want to classify it. If you want to classify it as non-physical, it's a fundamental part of the nature of the universe.
Oh, it's a very
Except Ronald
very
knows,
intricate.
right?
It's a very intricate concept that we use because it's very useful, but that doesn't actually make it physical reality, right?
Well,
Again,
yes, it does. Because
No,
how
it
can there be
doesn't.
cause? How can there be cause and effect if there isn't time?
time is just how we quantify the cause and effect.
No.
So
No, how can there be an effect of a cause if there isn't time between them?
well, you're asking, you're reifying time, saying if there isn't time, how is time not real? That's your question.
No, I'm not
That's dumb.
reifying time. I'm just saying. I'm saying it's a fundamental part of the nature of the universe. I don't
How
know
we
whether
quantify
I don't know
effects.
whether I don't know whether I would call that physical or not. But it's definitely not just an abstract concept. It cannot be.
My friend, it is. It's how we quantify the effect. See, when he invoked that, he's talking about a rate of decay. The rate of decay is a physical phenomena, but how we quantify the rate is applying a concept. It's purely abstract.
But how can you have cause and effect then with no time?
So you can't just reify time. You can't just reify time and ask me how could you have it without the reification of time? That's dumb.
So you can't answer the question.
No, it's a question that reifies and begs the question.
No,
Jim.
it doesn't
You don't get it.
reify or beg anything. What the fuck are you talking about?
You don't understand.
You're saying it's just somebody's idea about something, and it doesn't relate to reality in any way, and that's obviously not true.
I said it's not physical reality.
Reality cannot exist without it.
It's not physical reality.
It would be totally incoherent.
Stanford and Harvard just explained it to you guys, or Princeton and Stanford. So
No.
it's very
You've
simple.
only just heard about this for the very first time.
What are you talking about?
These two experiments.
No, that's all you guys ever do is you look at a rate of decay or you look at an
The
atomic
time
clock.
caused the decay? Was it time that caused the decay, genius gem?
No,
I didn't say. I didn't
That's what
say.
you said.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I never said at any point did I say time is the cause of things. Never said that. Never said anything even remotely close to that. Nothing similar to that. Nothing like that.
Okay, genius, what is the cause of decay?
Genius.
Go.
I don't know.
What is the time of decay?
We're
Go,
not trying
Jim.
to determine the cause of decay. What the fuck are you
Can we
talking
calm
about?
down, man? Can we all
I'm
calm
saying if there is an effect, any effect that is the result of a cause, any cause, then there has to be time
No.
in order for there to be cause and effect.
Okay. There's
Incorrect.
passing as all you're saying is
Explain
we
to me how there
quantify
can
the
be an effect of a cause without time involved. How would that be?
because you've introduced a cause and it has an effect. It's very simple.
But it
You
didn't.
didn't
But it didn't. It didn't.
You
The-
didn't
if there's no time,
quantify.
if there's no time, the cause and effect occurred simultaneously.
No.
So there'd be
All
no
you're-
way. There would be no way to determine a cause from an effect because
All you're-
everything would just be causing and affecting all at the same moment.
All you're doing is quantifying the cause and effect relationship with a concept called time. Do you not understand that?
Oh, I think that time is as I say, fundamental to our universe, and it's true. We quantify it. The ways that we quantify it are human concepts. Calling an amount of it a minute or a second, that is a human concept. But the thing itself is not.
So can you please physically
Clearly.
isolate time for me?
Oh my god.
Physically isolate time.
Can you
So
physically isolate
can you
time?
physically,
No.
Can you
No.
physically isolate a line? Because it's the same thing. It's a
With the
dimension,
dual-
mate.
Physically isolate yourself from space.
Space is another concept.
Mate, I have
So now
asked you
there's
to.
not
Can you
space
physically,
either.
can you physically separate?
Space
everything?
doesn't even exist. It's a concept.
You're
How are you talking? How can I hear you?
So time
Wait,
is
do I have
real
to, do I have
for
to show you guys more Ivy League professors telling you that you're dumbasses and that space is just a concept too?
Ivy League. Oh my god.
Your dumb
You guys revere
misunderstanding
them.
of
You guys revere them.
concept. Your dumb understanding of concept is not a point.
Actually, Stanford and Harvard and Princeton all agreed with me, and you guys disagree. So that makes you guys wrong within your own religious priesthood.
Stanford said it. No, what you did is misunderstood what Stanford said.
Okay, what Stanford say? What I misunderstand?
I'm pretty sure that their ideas that they were talking about was as concepts was not just this merely point that you're making. And I'm
Okay,
pretty
did
sure
you read it?
I'm pretty sure that discussing of concepts doesn't mean that if I label something as a concept, that it's not a thing that exists.
So
Okay,
you did not
It's
read it.
also a topic.
Oh
You
my
did
god,
not
you
read
guys are
it.
so dumb.
Philosophy.
Listen,
It's not
let's get.
It's not a scientific paper. It's
You're
it's
right because
philosophy.
time isn't
Hold on,
scientific or
Witsit.
physical,
Hold on,
you
Witsit.
moron.
Come on now. Come on.
Discuss
So,
the
so I have no
philosophical
problem-
paper
I
in
have no
fucking
problem with
Stanford,
time.
about
I have no
concept,
problem with-
because I'm not a moron.
I have no problem with time being a concept in certain contextual conversations.
No, just
That's fine.
objectively always.
Because you're right. You can't hold time in your hand. I agree. But when it comes to scientific experiments, time is a tangible thing in which you can change the duration of something. You can change the rate of it. You can play with it,
Voila.
if you will. But you're right. You can't hold time. But as someone else said, you can't hold speed as well. But you know that we can manipulate speed. We can change it. We can experience it. So when you bring up a philosophized paper about time, that is not the same when we talk about scientific experiments in the way you interact with time. These are two
Okay.
contextually different things.
And can I respond without someone interrupting me? So the reason that it's a philosophical paper is because it is an Ivy League school defining time. And since it is intrinsically philosophical, i.e. conceptual, i.e. abstract, then it is limited to philosophy. That is the entire point. Now what you guys do is you take a rate of decay, an oscillation rate of a quote-unquote atom, and then you say that time was physically changing. It's just a theory because it's just conceptual. You did not physically isolate time. You did not physically manipulate time. You cannot do that because intrinsically it's philosophical.
The
Fundamental misunderstanding.
The cause was
Of
a
your
different
theory.
rate of-
I understand your theory, and I'm calling it out for being theory, and you're claiming you know it's a fact when it's just a theory.
I'm explaining the experiment to you because it's not just a theory. It's not just a logical deduction. It is an experiment in the paper that I gave you, and essentially they changed the rate of speed in relative to the speed of light. Essentially, they had predictions for special relativity, and then they said if special relativity holds true, what should happen would be X, Y, and Z. Then they performed an experiment, changed the speed relative to the speed of light, and then X, Y, and Z did happen within the margin of error, essentially confirming special relativity, showing time dilation,
Oh.
and showing that these things are experiencing time at different rates.
No, all it's doing is showing that the rate of decay is affected by the motion. That's all it's showing. Objectively, all it shows is that the rate of decay is affected by motion, and then you apply the theory of relativity, stamping it onto it, saying, well, this is our explanation for it. Okay? All you showed objectively was that the rate of decay is affected by motion.
That's not true because the rate of decay
Just
is
debunk
a
yourself.
constant. The rate of decay for every particle, for every element, for everything, it is a constant. But the way that it changes is when you
It's adding motion.
When you change its speed relative to the speed of light, and it's only bolstered when we understand special relativity to a point where we can make predictions and then carry it out within an experiment and say, "Holy shit, we have all these predictions for different particles that are consistent, and we can predict the rate of this decay based on special relativity and confirm it experimentally."
You have to understand. I'm sorry you're really lost. I'm sorry you're really lost. But special relativity.
Than that, Witsit. It's not philosophy. It's not a theory.
Wow,
it's confirmed validation.
You're wrong. You're wrong. So
That's all it is
special
at the end of
relativity.
the day. You
The
can say no all
numbers.
you want,
You're just gonna
but
keep
there are
interrupting like a little bit.
experiments backing this up.
This must make you right if you keep interrupting me. So
You
special
didn't let him get
relativity.
to the end, Witsit. Sorry. Shout me out. Can you shout me out, please? Thank you.
Yeah, Jose JG's a bitch, and he wants to now just derail the conversation too. You're welcome.
Well said, Witsit, well said.
Yep. So the thing is, special relativity actually derives from observing light, and now you're saying based on the quantification of light that special relativity intrinsically is, that means special relativity is real if we reify the idea of physical properties within concepts. That's very dumb. Now the point is that the rate of decay is affected by the motion. Okay, that's it. That's all you've proven, and now you have interpreted it by reifying the idea that space and time bend and warp. That's all you did. You did not prove it. You did not physically isolate time. You did not physically manipulate time. You did not bend time. You did not warp time.
This has everything to do with the speed relative to the speed of light and then time dilation. That's what it has to do with. It has nothing to do with space-time. So if you don't understand what's going on, it's probably unwise to speak on it.
Yeah, I do understand what's going on. You're reifying the idea of relativity based on the quantification of light, which is what special relativity is. Okay,
Out of
and
the
then by special relativity attributed a constant speed to light, and then general relativity was built upon that assumption. So then you fast forwarded 100 years, assuming and reifying the quantification of the speed of light to be true, and then you've looked at the rate of decay changing based on the motion introduced, and you've said that that is somehow verifying a physical quality of time, and that is patently false.
No, it's not patently false because there's predictions that are made, and then through experimentation you can validate these, or you can refute special relativity. Because if you have these predictions in a very specific way and say at this rate of speed compared to the speed of light versus this relative speed of light, we can make these predictions, and then if we carry out an experiment and they don't match within the margin of error, then we know either we did something wrong within the experiment or special relativity doesn't hold true. But when you have experiment after experiment validating special relativity, then you have nothing to fall back on except for, so far, everything confirms special relativity as it's stated.
How did you eliminate all the other variables?
Wait up. I let him get it out. You agree that when you say speed relative to the speed of light, that is stupid? You do realize you keep saying one of the dumbest phrases that could be said. The speed relative to the speed of light. So does the speed change if you blow out the speed of light? How do you determine speed?
So after all of that, that's your question that you go to?
You can't answer. So, what your baseless assertion is that you have predicted this.
An answer. You realize this, right? Not every.
So you realize that when you say
there could be a question mark at the end of your statement.
So you get to not let me finish and just interrupt a monologue over and over? Is that how this works?
No, I'm trying to get to the end of my sentence because I'm making it.
I was in the middle of a sentence, you moron.
Go ahead, Witsit. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so when you say the speed relative to the speed of light, that's painfully redundant and stupid and ignorant, and of course involves reification, which is all you ever do. And then you said that you made predictions and it proved the predictions. All you did was make predictions based on the quantification of the effective motion on a rate of decay. Motion affects how much we can quantify something, how we quantify it. The quantification process is affected by motion, okay? This is something that we know. This is independent of saying that space and time bend or that time dilates, right? It's just that motion affects the rate of decay. That's what we know. Now, you've looked at it based on the quantification of that and the travel of light, quote unquote, the presupposed travel from point A to point B. Based on that assumption, you've then applied that to predictions using the quantification of what we know, which is that the rate of decay is affected by motion. And then when you see that the rate of decay is affected by motion, which we already know, you have the audacity and ignorance to spout out that proves the predictability and the veracity of the claim that time is dilating. That is lunacy. You did not in any way isolate the physical nature of time.
Okay, we got
go on. Can we please
we need to answer,
the concept of reification from Witsit's brain, please? Please remove it.
Reification is where it has misplaced concreteness to a concept.
Whitson, you forgot about the masses.
I forgot about the masses?
Yes, you have another thing that you have to imply it. Yes. Not only the dimensions. Okay, we got it, the dimensions. But what about the masses that are involved in?
What about them?
But you forgot about them. That's my point.
I forgot about them? No, what about them?
So the masses of everything what you have been and the guy have been discussed that have been put it in the experiments.
Mass is also just
you put only the speed, and that's it. You put only the traveling points to from a point to another, and that's it. The mass of things. What's happened with them?
Oh, you're the one making the claim. You tell me what's happening with the masses.
No. You
Theoretically.
You forgot about that. Why you don't imply them?
Okay, because I was responding.
What is the biggest change? What the masses?
I was responding to his claim. He didn't bring up mass, moron. So if you want to bring it up, how about you specify a claim as to what is it that's pertinent to the conversation?
So again, you cherry picking things. You're cherry picking things. In the cosmological constant, it's about the masses as well.
Okay, but I was responding to. Hey, listen very carefully. I was responding to his claim specifically. He did not invoke mass.
But you from the start, from the beginning, you didn't involve masses.
Because I was responding specifically to his claim, and he didn't invoke
Jesus.
mass. Are you dumb?
You
didn't
brought
say
up
anything about
masses, you
strawberry ice
moron.
cream
What
either.
about them? What about the
Jeremy.
masses? You brought them up.
I'm sorry, Witsit.
So if you don't put masses together with the speed that he's implying, yeah, you're not gonna have the bendings of the space-time.
Explain it to us. Explain it to us. What does the mass have in fact? Go ahead, genius. Tell him what he left out.
Bendings of space-time. The things that you miss them.
Bendings of
So when you
space-time? What are you, a
mass
fucking abject moron?
mass is a concept we use to supposedly quantify matter, and so since you quantified matter with the concept of mass, and then you
Again,
applied
another thing. So you,
all right,
you,
if you interrupt me again, I'm leaving. If you interrupt me one more time, I'm
The
leaving.
whole time, dude.
Get the fuck out, asshole.
Yeah, interrupt me again, and I'm just gonna leave.
You got a young
This is the
guy
thing.
making fools of all of you, you morons. Way to go, Witsit.
Mass is a
he's
concept.
cherry-picking, mate. He's
Mass
cherry-picking.
is an
He doesn't
attempt to
understand the
Okay,
concept.
let's finish.
Shut up. Just
Okay.
because you sound like Count
All
Dracula
right,
doesn't mean you
thank
get to keep interrupting
Let
everyone.
him finish, please.
Mass is the concept that we use to supposedly quantify the amount of matter. Okay, so that conceptual quantification of matter is non sequitur to you physically isolating supposed physical characteristics of time. So you're saying that time dilates. Now that you say, look, here's mass over here, how we supposedly quantify matter, that means that time is physically dilated. No, we're asking, can you verify your physical claim of dilation upon a concept of time? Did you physically isolate the physical properties of dilation in time?
Now answer that question directly.
How you can take out a dimension, mate? This is the biggest point that I have been starting from the beginning, and I have asked you how you can take out a dimension from a calculation.
I'm not taking anything out.
Time it's another dimension, mate. It's nothing that is going to be implied for a concept of something. It's a dimension.
Yeah, friend, I'm not taking anything out.
Dimension and what is the concept of the dimension? A line is a dimension. Can you take out a line from something? You stupid man.
I just make one small point quick. Can I just make one small point on this concept? I think the original point is that you saying that since it's just a concept, right? It's just a made up thing in us. It's not an actual part of reality or physical in nature of any sort.
Right.
But the thing the place that puts you in, if you're going to accept that as true, would be that things like numbers, language itself is a concept, and so therefore you just negated those. They don't exist in reality, right?
Languages are just concepts, yeah. So like we agreed to call the apple an apple. If we had called it an orange, then it would change. Nothing physically changed, though. There's just like a speed limit. A speed limit's that's my point. You're saying that conceptual abstractions, human constructs, have physical properties. It's like a speed limit, okay? The sign that says speed limit's physical, but the speed limit itself is conceptual. It's a human construct, an agreed upon limit to your speed, right? It's just a speed limit. That's a concept. Speed limits can't be physically bent. You can't physically bend freedom. You can't physically bend love. You can't physically bend concepts. Time is a concept that we've agreed on. We said 60 cents in a minute, whatever. We quantify quote unquote passing based on the cycle of the sky. Okay, because the sun comes back, we have 24-hour cycle based on the sun. It's just a human construct. Now you're making a whole additional claim. You're leaping way over and saying you're taking that concept, that human construct we agreed on, and it is physically dilating. So I'm asking you, can you physically isolate and verify the physical characteristics of dilation of time?
Can you tell me how much matter is in a kilogram mass, please?
What?
You said mass is quantification of
He's
matter.
an idiot.
And I'm asking how much matter is in 1 kilogram mass?
Oh, mass is in fact the quantification method. So when you ask me how much, that's what we use. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Matter.
So you're going from quantification to quantification.
So I'm asking you how much matter is in 1 kilogram mass?
That's what mass is. It's how much matter there is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
So I have to go back to Ivy League schools to show you that you're wrong within your own religion for the fourth time today?
Sure, go ahead. Show me I'm wrong.
Okay. So I guess that was your way of saying you can't answer the question. Can you show?
My way to say you talk shit.
No, I asked the question 4 times and no one's going to answer it, and you're going to keep interrupting me. Can you verify? Can you verify that you physically isolated time and the supposed claim of the physical characteristic of dilation within time? Can you please give me the physical evidence that you physically isolated the physical characteristics of dilation within time?
So time. How much matter is in 1 kilogram mass?
You can't answer the question, so I mean, it's pathetic.
I don't want to.
Well,
If
the
you
thing
don't
that they
want
use
yes,
as the
I
token
don't
for
want you.
time
have
dilating
been
is a little
answered
weird.
to you. Have
don't
been
know.
answered to you. It's a dimension. You cannot isolate dimensions, Witsit. Why it's so hard to understand?
Time is not a
Dimensions.
dimension.
It is a dimension, moron.
Time's a
God,
concept.
no, it's not, you fucking idiot.
Well, the problem with that is by the scientific method, or the scientific method that's being bandied around in flat earth circles on Discord. You need to isolate the variable. So if you have a variable which can't be isolated, then you can't dilate time. They must mean something else. And what they appear to mean is the change in the vibration rates or whatever of these cesium atoms in these clocks. And they're using that as a token that time is somehow dilated, but it appears highly
That's not the
mystical
source I was
and
provided, Lemon.
unnecessary. So
Ron
the
Hatch
thing
wrote a
that's
book
actually
called Sleeping
dilating or whatever appears to be the vibration rates of these cesium clocks, and that can be explained with a much more mechanical, less mystical interpretation, where these clocks and their atoms are butting up against a substance of space, like the ether, making their vibration rates change and the time that they read out change. So I think we need to go with some other explanation here that's a bit less mystical.
Do you have any experiments supporting your claim? Because it sounds like your personal interpretation rather
There's
than
definitely
a
an
validation
experiment
from
that
an experiment.
supports that claim, brother. It's Ron Hatch when he augmented all of the satellites for the U.S. Farming industry and military, Navy. He wrote a book called Escaping Einstein because he found that there was a problem with this so-called idea that speeding up is what's changing the time. It's getting outside the gravitational well, which changes the time. And it just seems so coincidental that to speed up at those speeds, you must be at those heights. So they're saying, without ruling out the, the height, it's not like they took a train and they ran it on the ground. What they did was they took it above the gravitational well and sped it up. Right, and it was already moving at those speeds before it got that high. So just so you know, they could never rule out the variable of it just being gravitation. Go ahead,
Grim. Yeah, yes, they can. So the sources that I provide have nothing to do with clocks.
Haven't,
cesium atoms.
because Ron Hatch.
I could get to the end. I really could. I'll repost the source. That's fine. But they didn't interact in that way at all. So I would recommend reading that source, and it's essentially the radioactive decay of particular particles. Being a constant, and then they only changed the speed at which they were traveling, and then they got different.
Oh, really?
Decay.
Only the speed?
So how
did they eliminate all the other variables?
Well, the cesium clocks demonstrate that there can be a mechanical mechanism here that if you're butting up against the substance of space itself, aka the ether, things could change. Vibration rates could change, decay rates could change, atomic rates or whatever could change. I mean, that opens up a new realm of possibility if that framework is correct.
So, Grim, the first one there, the first source. So that'll essentially be not in orbit, not in space, not around different gravitational wells. It's going to be pretty constant, and then all there's changing is the speed.
But that's assuming that the space hasn't changed. The ether may change and be more pure higher up and more diluted down here where it has to, compete with other matter to be mixed in with. So that possibility that a mechanical explanation is still available.
Two things,
going
Lemon.
around in circles in this speed.
Lemon. First thing is provide evidence for the ether, and the second thing is
force.
It's very nice. It's very nice that ether can do whatever you want to do in whatever.
You mean like gravity does for you?
Well, we're still at the framework stage right here because we have a bunch of unproven frameworks that we're using to make interpretations. Prove space-time. I guess after that, I can prove ether, vice versa. We're at the framework level right now to explain what the hell is going on, but I think it's much less mystical to have a mechanical substance of space an ether of some sort that these atoms or whatever are butting up against, changing their decay rates and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and before we get into the ether, listen. I need you guys to realize that the highest levels of education on your side, right? They know for a fact that space-time is just a theory, and they're trying to work it out. They have not physically manipulated and bent time. They think the oscillation rate, the differentiation and oscillation rate, is good evidence towards reifying their theory, right? They think that the change of decay may be consistent with their theory, but they do not say that they physically isolated time and dilated it, physically validating the claim. Yet you guys on Discord will act like you proved the physical characteristics of time, while I sit here and read Princeton saying the opposite.
Well, because you're dumb and they're not, Witsit. That's all.
Wow.
Princeton says
that's what they're thinking in here. Like, there's nothing
Pretty
you
much
can say.
true, isn't it? I mean, he thinks the Earth's flat. You've got to be pretty fucking dumb to think that.
You guys. Seriously, I mean, you got a coward's argument because you always go to what everybody else says, and then you're wrong because everybody else says this.
No,
that's the coward's
he's a
argument.
He's a person living in the 21st century who thinks the Earth's flat. I think that definitely gives us call to question his reasoning. Definitely.
Oh, sorry that you think that concepts have physical properties.
Locally, the Earth is flat for him, and he doesn't experience the other shit.
And I went and measured the surface on long distance observation. It's always flat. So,
if all else fails, intellectual dishonesty will see you through.
If all else fails, people that claim I'm stupid can just watch all my streams and make memes of them. What a bunch of weirdos.
The funny thing is,
all else
they do watch all
fails,
your
Jim's going to
streams.
come out and say we're flat earthers, not address the subject. Well done.
I have addressed it. If one of you can explain to me how you can have cause and effect with no time, go ahead. But none of you did. You just made excuses. Said I was reifying things, which is complete
I guess we'll just call
bullshit.
it spooky action at a distance, Jim.
No, let's not call it that. Because that's the name
Jim,
for something else.
Jim, let me explain to you. I know you won't be honest enough to go down this route, okay? But whenever you say that right there, it's under the assumption that passing is linear, right? That time is linear. It's under the reification of
it's not.
Yeah, yes, it is.
It doesn't assume anything.
Yes, it does.
No,
You're
it
assuming
doesn't.
it's linear. You're assuming it's
all
linear.
It's all based on all of my experiences of all causes and all effects.
Linear time, yes, exactly
it's
right.
empirically. It's
you can
something
only
I have
experience linear
established
time,
empirically.
No, it's just you assuming that time is linear. Yes, it is.
No, it does not assume. It does not assume linear time. Time can be exponential. It can dilate in all kinds of different ways, and cause and effect would still require linear time. It doesn't require linear time. It just requires time.
Well, you just said linear time.
You're right. I misspoke for a second. You misspoke for a second, but if that's what you want to focus on, that we can. If you want
to focus on the fact that you guys need to be intellectually honest and admit you did not physically isolate.
Told you the answer.
Hey, Scott, did you physically isolate the physical characteristics of dilation within the?
They have done that, though. They have done that when they dilate time in experimental testing.
Scott, that's how did you physically manipulated time?
I didn't do it. I'm saying that they have done it. The scientists.
You're saying that they physically isolated time.
Wow.
Yes, when they do dilation experiments, they're able to specifically isolate and dilate time. Yes.
Wow. They physically isolated time.
Yes. Are you not aware of these experiments?
Yeah, I know all about it. Your oscillation rate.
Why do you keep asking that question? Why do you ask that question 4 times?
Because they don't physically isolate time.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
No, they don't.
And how in the world do those clocks come back at different times?
The physical mechanism affected by physical things and time.
Oh, you mean the physical mechanism of time?
No.
Explain to us.
Clocks aren't physical mechanisms of time. The clocks aren't physical time. Oh my gosh.
How do you know that? How could you possibly be?
Scott, explain to us by what mechanism is time reversed, please, Scott. Let me ask Scott a question. Explain to us by what mechanism is time manipulated.
It is not reversed, but it can be changed. The speed can be changed, so it can be manipulated. It can be dilated.
How? By what mechanism?
Velocity. Through velocity.
You're clearly assuming that it's the time.
You're not assuming that. The clocks tell different times, so clearly the time is passing differently for the clocks.
Clearly, the mechanical issue of the clock is being disturbed in one or the other.
Well, except for the fact that they change in exactly as predicted by Einstein's equations, and they do it in all directions with very, very little margin of error. So it's not just the mechanics of the clock are getting messed with, it's that they're actually dilating as predicted by relativity.
Okay, how about this?
Why did they need Ronald Hatch to write a book, who wrote a book called Escaping Einstein, to augment the GPS system so that they'd actually work as touted?
So here's a link for you to show you that it is actually true. There's been many experiments. This is not just one or two. This is like 14 different experiments.
Hey, Scott,
you can read about it yourself.
Scott,
hey, Witsit, how about if I'm in the middle of it answering a grim question, you don't interrupt?
Is general relativity a theory?
Sure.
Okay, so what established time was physical?
I'm sorry, what do you mean by how is that related to the first question?
I'll show you. What established that time was physical?
These experiments I just posted about.
No. General relativity is where it was established that time is physical.
I just posted experiments that confirm general relativity. Genius.
So you cry about interrupting a lot. You sure do cry about interrupting a lot.
It's the theory. General relativity is the theory. The experiments are experimental evidence that confirm the theory.
They're not. They don't confirm the theory because highest levels of education admit that it's still just theoretical. And what
education?
It's not confirmed.
Yeah. Why are you guys going to interrupt every time? You're guys going to interrupt every time?
Well, how many times are you going to say highest levels of education like that?
As in Ivy League universities.
Oh, you mean the kind that we all went to? Okay, go on.
Yeah, the kind that I just cited and says you're wrong.
They're wrong though. They're the ones that actually did these experiments.
You interrupt every time. Yeah, you interrupt every time, don't you?
Things change. Remember, Scott, in science, things change.
Sure, things change, but this hasn't changed yet.
Is there a chance that things can change?
Of course, there's always a chance.
So it's not proven then, right?
Nothing is proven. Nothing in science is proven. Not one single thing is proven.
When Brenda says stupid stuff like confirmed it to be reality, that's not true, is it?
Confirmed it to be true is not proven. Confirmed it to be true means that the evidence that we have points to it being true. We have confirmation of it being true, but we do not have a proof that it's true.
No,
confirmation. Far greater criteria, more stringent criteria.
Define confirmation.
Confirmation means that the evidence that we have supports it, that we don't have counter evidence for it.
No, that's not what confirmation means.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We do not have falsification, and we do have support. That's confirmation.
No, confirmation that it's true. You said confirmation.
Proof means that it's absolutely true. It cannot possibly be wrong. Proof means that it's universally true. It'll be true now, tomorrow, and forever. Nothing in science fills that category. That's criteria that's far too strict.
Yeah, science is inductive. It's not deductive.
Okay, here's a definition of confirmation. A confirmation provides proof that something is true.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just dictionary words. How used?
Well, it is. It is. You have to think about the word proof and how it's used in particular context. Look, this is the English language. It's absolutely cram-packed full of nuances in every single word.
No, this is what you should do.
Pretending that each word only ever has one meaning is absurd.
So that's right. It's called the Socratic method, right? So when Brenda runs around making up her own definitions on a whim, right? That's not how the Socratic method works. Right?
Using the same
smart thing that you're going to interrupt me. You guys interrupt me every time, every single time.
Because you never stop talking.
It's not true. I never talk more than 30 seconds.
Let him finish. Go ahead.
So the Socratic method is where we have agreed upon terms so we can have productivity of conversation. When Brenda comes in and just starts throwing around subjective new applications of definitions, that's not how it works. You guys should have been honest and said she misspoke with confirmation. The definition of confirmation is that it provides proof that something is true. There is no confirmation of the physical claim of time dilating.
That is complete nonsense. That's just not true.
Okay, then what's the definition of it then?
Well, if it confirms something, that means it supports the hypothesis that already exists. But it doesn't mean it absolutely has to, because we use the word confirm, that also means we've, by implication, used the word proof. We just haven't. It's not true. You have to use it. You have to think about the nuance of the language. And it's just ridiculous to pretend something else.
Let me give you a hypothetical. If we could grab time and then bend it, did we prove that time can bend?
I have no idea. No,
yeah, the answer is
No, you didn't.
Okay, so what's the other option? If I grab time and bend it, then what's the other option other than time can bend?
Because in this sense, proofs only exist in maths, right? They don't exist in science. Science just makes tentative conclusions based on the current data
answer the
set,
question
right?
specifically, man. If I grab time and I bend
I don't know how to answer the question.
Hey.
I don't know how you could grab time. I don't know how you could bend time.
You can't.
And I don't know if you had grabbed and bent time, what the result would be. I don't know, Witsit. It's a bullshit.
Okay, let me give you another analogy. If I grab a ruler, yeah, exactly.
Let me give you one. Let me give you one. How do you have effect without a cause?
Okay, look. Now you're running away trying to ask other questions.
How do you have cause and effect without time?
Now you're running away trying to ask other questions. We're going to talk about this for a second.
No, I'm not. It's just a question I've been asking since
you interrupt every time,
the beginning.
Okay, so I answered it 5 times. So if I grab a ruler and I bend it,
answer it a sixth time. Answer it a sixth time.
Yeah, time is just a.
I missed the first 5.
This is where you say. This is where you don't respond. You're reifying the quality of time, assuming it's linear.
That's not answering it. That's just telling me I didn't ask it properly. Isn't it?
I'm sorry you don't understand. So if I grab a ruler and I bend
reifying a ruler.
No, you can physically verify
You're
rulers.
reifying grabs.
Okay, so if I grab a ruler and then I bend it,
you're reifying bending.
And the conceptual of bending.
Okay, so if I grab a ruler,
define even means.
You guys are tripping, man.
I've already given my answer. I've already given my answer 5 times.
So how do you tell that you've changed time? By watching the effects of something that happens to matter?
What do clocks measure?
Oh my god, dude.
What does a clock measure?
So you're basically inferring that something happened to time, but in reality, you have no idea.
Time has hands. Times have hands that tick on at a certain pace based on our quantification of the motion. And why are you interrupting every fucking time I talk, dude? It's getting ridiculous. Time has hands that tick relative to the quantification method we engineered them with based on the motion in the sky.
Time doesn't have hands. That's reification.
Yeah, can you give me a hand?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
What reification means when you say something like time has hands. That's what.
Why are you talking, dog-bone
Didn't say
woman?
time has
Shut the
hands.
fuck up.
Never said time has hands. I never said time has hands. I said clocks. I said clocks.
No, you said time has hands.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he was laughing from your worldview, though. Remember how you did that with the religious thing?
Let me rephrase. Let me say it again for you guys. This is all recorded. You guys are just liars and know that it doesn't matter because you hide behind anonymity. So if I have a clock with their hands in the clock, we all know what I'm talking about. The clocks have hands, not literal hands like people. The hands of a clock. Okay, we have hands in the clock and they tick at a certain pace based on the quantification of the motion in the sky that does not in any way verify the physical nature of the concept of time.
The question was, what do those hands measure? You're not answering, you're dodging.
They just, I already explained, the motion in the sky.
Clocks measure time.
They measure the motion in the sky.
They measure time.
How about dog bones, Brenda? How about dog bones?
They're the fixed rate that they measure.
You guys are getting dismantled and you don't even realize it.
Clocks measure
your inability to understand and your ability to say nuh-uh to everything isn't a valid argument.
How is the specific answer nuh-uh?
That's why it's boiling down.
Direct answers to everything. He's destroying you systematically.
There you go, Essie. There you go. I'm surprised you could talk with this crack cock in your mouth.
Yep, so you asked me what is the clock measuring? It's the motion
put it in your eyes, dude.
It's the motion in the sky.
Let me know when you're done with it, Essie. Let me know when you're done with it.
Fool of you clown.
Let me know when you're done with it.
The concept of time came from the motion in the sky.
Yeah, so how do you measure motion?
Well, you see that it keeps on resetting in a cycle and you can record it, and then we've come up with agreed upon increments like minutes and seconds and hours based on
time. So it is time after all.
Time is the concept, you moron. Time is the concept, the human construct. We defined the second based on the speed of light, quote unquote. We define time based on the quantification of human constructs that we came up with based on the motion of the sky. It's a cycle.
But you don't believe in the speed of light. So how are you using seconds?
So the unit of measurement is irrelevant. Whether you measure in meters or inches is irrelevant.
So did time physically change when we changed how we quantified it?
Does the length of a piece of wood change if I measure it in meters or inches?
That's not analogous.
Analogous. That is analogous. It doesn't matter what the unit of measurement of time is. It doesn't matter.
It's not analogous because that requires you to reify the physicality of time, which is the very question that's called a begging the question fallacy.
In this case.
Stop interrupting me every time I talk. Yeah, exactly. A piece of wood's physical. You can physically verify it. That's not analogous to time. You have to reify time to make it analogous to a piece of wood, which is what's in contention right now. I'm sorry you guys are this far behind. So what we have is a human construct called time. We have a certain intricate or portions of time that we quantify based on the motion of the sky. Time's just a concept. It's a human construct. It would change relative to how we decide to quantify it. It is in no way physical. You have to claim that it is physically dilating, yet you cannot physically isolate it. So how do you prove that?
So if time isn't physical, why did the clocks come back showing different times?
Well, you would have to account for all
the vibration of the cesium clocks.
Exactly.
These clocks are basically measuring the motion of the arms in the clock, if you really want to be technical about it. We let that be a token of time because we think that they are consistently moving within the clock, and therefore we accept that as an acceptable token to represent unchanging time. If we really thought that time was dilating and bending, why aren't the arms of the clock dilating and bending? The token that they used was the vibration of the cesium clocks, that every million vibrations or whatever registers a tick on the clock. If the vibration rate changes, then the mechanical workings of the clock will change.
Yeah, so why did the cesium atoms in one clock vibrate at a different rate than the cesium atoms in the other?
Because of their environment.
No, it's not just vibrate. It's not just vibrate, it's resonate at their specific.
Yeah. They
resonance is a vibrational pattern. Good try though.
But yeah, so it matters. So the point is, why did they operate? Why did they resonate or vibrate at different rates?
Because of their environment. You would have to account for all the variables. Stop interrupting me. You'd have to account for all the physical variables, but you don't do that. You presuppose that the only physical variable that's there is the physicality of time, space-time, reifying the physicality of time you're claiming to prove. That's the only way you can even claim that this is actually proving the physicality of time, is to reify the physicality of time, and then to disregard any other of the other environmental variables.
But no, so the thing is, cesium has its own natural resonance frequency, and somehow you're claiming that these two different instances of cesium somehow have different natural resonance frequencies.
Oh, I never claimed that. That's called a straw man. Okay.
That's what you're implying.
No, it's not what I'm implying. No, what you do to supposedly measure the oscillation rate is you use light, okay? So you would have to know how the environment affects the light to actually know if your quantification methodology is correct.
How does the environment affect the oscillation of the cesium atom?
Once again, Brenda, if you blow up a balloon and then suck in a balloon, blow a balloon, suck a balloon, blow a balloon, it's easy to do that while you're at rest. The moment you start moving, that rate is going to change. There's your cesium clock, blowing up, sucking in, and it can't vibrate at the same rate because it's coming up against a mechanical medium that is impinging that process, keeping it from happening at the same rate. There's your time dilation right there. If it is going through a mechanical substance of space, the ether at a different rate.
Yeah, let me explain it very simple. Brenda, listen, Brenda, listen. You need to listen, okay? You all guys need to listen. Whenever you look at the oscillation, no, stop, boys. Listen, man. Lemon's right, okay? When you look at the medium,
Brenda, you can't move.
Look, they're all the same, okay? It's all the same. You are trying to explain the effect of the medium, and we're trying to explain the effect of the medium. You're claiming that your explanation of the effect of the medium being space and time physically altering is what you think is true, but you have to just presuppose that. Now, you're asking us to replace it, or it must be true. No, you need to physically isolate time, physically dilating, to make the claim that that confirmed space time, because that's your positive claim.
So you have to explain what in the environment would physically change.
No, you have to explain that.
Well, let's just say
if you're going to complain about me interrupting you, you can't interrupt me.
You're shifting the burden of proof, though.
If you're going to complain about me interrupting you, you can't interrupt me. So again,
Well, don't shift the burden of proof.
So again, no, this is my original question, right? There are,
If you call me names. Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted.
So again, if there are no physical means by which you can alter the oscillation rate of a cesium atom in an atomic clock, therefore the only thing left is time. Because that was
the substance of space itself, the ether is being proposed as having mechanical property.
There's no ether. That's already been proved.
So since Brenda just says things, so you're claiming, this is the actual reality of the situation, you're claiming that you have supported the claim that time physically dilates with the oscillation rate of cesium atoms changing. That's your claim. You're making a positive claim that space-time is physical and that time has physically dilated and that you quote-unquote confirmed it by showing the oscillation rate. Now, when we challenge it saying you didn't even isolate time physically, you didn't account for all the variables, you had to presuppose the makeup of the background medium being space-time alone to even say this and then reify the supposed physicality you're supposedly proving. You have then shifted the burden of proof over, saying that we need to replace your false assertion or your false assertion is true without any proof.
Space-time is not a medium, mate. Space-time is not a medium. Cut up with the crap.
So I'm just
like a medium by their behavior, and you can tell a lot about the truth by a person's behavior. If they're talking about it bending is the physical behavior. They're trying to say on one hand it's an empty medium, an Epicurean empty vacuum medium, but even now in the quantum vacuum, they say that it's full of energy, so it's very contradictory.
So you just not understanding space-time, which is understandable because it's high-level physics. Right, space-time is physical.
Oh, you can't even understand a low level of biology. So stop acting like you have an intellectual high ground here. So how about you respond specifically to what we said? You're presupposing the physicality of space-time, saying that time dilates, and that you established this and confirmed it with the oscillation rate of cesium atoms, yet you have not physically isolated time to make that claim.
Can you stop talking about the oscillation rate of cesium? That's not how the cesium clock works. It's about the resonance frequency of them. And you don't just randomly change the resonance frequency of a material or an atom. It is the same. It is an aspect of that material.
It's physically affected by the environment. You're claiming to know the characteristics of the environment by just baselessly asserting it.
Can you show any experiment where you change the resonance frequency of a material? If you can do that, Nobel Prize for you.
Yes, I just showed you atomic clocks.
But they don't. An atomic clock, it's not about a cesium atom oscillating. It's about sending cesium atoms through a radio wave field, and if the radio wave is in the exact right frequency to resonate with the cesium atom, then the cesium atom is counted at the end.
Right, oscillation rate of the cesium atom.
No, it counts the amount of resonating cesium atoms passing through a radio wave field.
Count the amounts that are at the same rate as the field.
No, hold on. And if you modify the radio wave field to be exactly the correct frequency, then all the cesium atoms will resonate.
Okay, so where'd you get the change? Where'd you get the change?
The change is in how many cesium atoms arrive.
Hold on. Explain how that happened.
Cut out.
Explain how that works. Like you got a clock, right? And then you got the cesium in a little bin. And then you got what? Kind of explain how this. Then you've got a microphone or a.
No,
you cut out there for about a minute.
Okay, so you're sending cesium atoms through a funnel, and through this funnel you have a radio wave. You have an electromagnetic radiation field going through. Now, at the end of this tunnel, you have a sensor. Now, this sensor is looking for high energy cesium atoms. These high-energy cesium atoms only happen when the cesium atoms resonate from the radio wave. If they're not resonating, they're not reaching this high-energy state. So, and this is just a basic way of how a cesium atom responds to the radio wave.
Where do you go find cesium at?
an element.
If they mine it from the earth as a metal ore or something like that, you probably mine it from the earth.
Okay, so it's all a made up story.
It's not made up. It's an element. It's an element. It's not made up.
All right, it's an element of.
Can you guys answer the question?
I guess you get it from the Chinese. Is that where you get it from?
I just want to. Can we get back to the serious question? How did you physically isolate the dilation of time that you are claiming?
What we're getting is a different amount of cesium atoms arriving at the end per second.
Okay, so you're not getting a dilation of time.
Wait, a dimension can be stretched or can
So
be
the rate has time out. The rate has changed. The rate changed, and you're presupposing that means that time itself is physically dilating, correct?
Because we're sending out the same amount, and yet we're receiving it at a slower rate. How is that possible?
Based on the is it based on the altitude and the location of the atom clock?
Oh my God, Witsit,
Yes. It is, exactly. So you need another guy needs to shut up because he doesn't even understand it at all. So it's based on the altitude, okay, which means it's based on the environment. Can you please indicate that you physically isolated time dilation?
We have isolated a change in the cause and effect.
No. What you isolated was a rate changing, okay, based on altitude, and then you presuppose that is because time physically dilates.
Yeah, it was postulated in Einstein's general relativity, and it's demonstrated through the observation of the change in the rate of cesium atoms being received. You're entirely right, Witsit.
It requires the presupposition and
like
reification of
gravitational lensing, which is another thing that's been predicted.
So it requires the presupposition and reification of relativity.
Okay, someone else.
So again, it requires the presupposition and reification of relativity.
No one is saying that this experiment, its only possible explanation is this. We're saying, yes, but what we're saying is, with every single bit of knowledge, with every single bit of theory and physics and everything, and every experiment we've done, this seems to be why that's happening.
I kind of like this guy. What's your name?
Gummy Bear.
Okay, this guy's not bad. I don't mind this guy. At least he's pretty honest. You know, like, that's my whole point. The rest of the room will go down fighting, bro. You actually understand it, and that's why you are at least honest enough to say, well, that's what it seems.
Position, Witsit.
He's saying that's what it seems.
We were saying that science doesn't prove things.
No, calm down.
It reaches a tentative conclusion based on the current data set.
Okay,
you
but
were trying to load the proof thing onto us, and we were resisting it.
No. See, she jumped in and said that we confirmed the theory of relativity with cesium.
Yeah, you turned that into the word proof unnecessarily.
Let's make it a super simple example, like you were talking about with the ruler and bending it before. Now, you can bend a ruler and you can be, oh, this confirms that you can bend a ruler, but I can propose to you a ruler made of a different material, and you might not be able to bend that. And then I can propose to you this model, and it tells whether you can bend something or not, and its inputs are the type of material and the width and these aspects. And every time you bend a ruler and try this equation to figure out if you should have been able to bend that ruler or not, the equation makes sense. And that is confirmation of that model. It is not proof that that model is the fundamental of the universe, but it proves, it confirms that model to any current experiment that we have ever thought up has been working along this model.
So to apply this model, i.e. this theory, to this demonstration and say that it confirms your explanation, does it require the assumption that time is in fact physically there and can physically dilate? Does it require the assumption that time is physically there and can physically dilate?
That's the theory.
Thank you. So that doesn't prove it. It requires the presupposition that it can happen.
Proves anything. Nobody thinks it proves.
It doesn't even get close. It requires the presupposition of what
confirms what the model expected there to be.
The model is based on how light is affected based on its environment. That's what special relativity is.
Yes. And now that model, using that as an axiom, is predicting something, and then after we're testing it, it seems to be doing exactly what we predicted.
Oh, you
That
need
is
to listen.
confirmation.
No, you need to listen. So special relativity is based on the behavior of light relative to its environment. No one is contending that the behavior of light changes relative to its environment. We agree with that. What we disagree with is your claimed cause of that. You've quantified the behavior of light and the change within based on and relative to its environment. You quantified it, right? And then you put an abstract explanation behind the quantification called the theory of relativity. And then you've went and reified and showed that the quantification method's true, which no one ever even disputed. And then you said that proves the conceptual cause claim that you put behind it. That's dumb.
Witsit, the consequence of holding light as invariant is that space and time can be bent or dilated.
Well, maybe we need to check that premise. It looks like the speed of light has changed throughout history. There are people that say it has changed and slowed down. You were saying electric inversion?
It hasn't changed.
Lemon, I just want to say something real quick because I gotta go for a walk with my wife. But I left a link down in the description about how those discrepancies in the I guess experiments are shown, and if they just rule out the part where, because they start the clocks, then they get them in the plane, and then they start to fly the plane up and then do all this other stuff, and that's the part that actually changes the time on the clock, is the inertia differences in the accelerations. Okay, so the inertia differences are what are changing, but when there's no more inertia, doesn't matter how fast the clock is going, it's not going at any different time or anything. It's not even decaying at a different rate.
Exactly.
The decay only happens in the immediate inertia points. It's not about the speed. It's about the change
throughout. They're tracking the time drift through the entire flight, for example. They're tracking it in real time. They're logging it. And if what you're saying is true, then you would have these spikes and drops depending on what's happening with the quote-unquote inertia of it, right? But no, the amount changes proportionate to the speed and the time that it's at that speed, right? There's an entire data log for this, and it's perfectly in line with what's predicted, the amount that's predicted to change.
Right. So just because you say right and then continue to talk rather than saying nope, not in this study, not in this paper, that they're actually dissecting the problems with the experiment instead of assuming and averaging like you think they're not, but they are. They're taking from start to finish and putting it all together in numbers and averaging it. They're not measuring particularly, because those measurements end up coming off wrong and they make them look bad. So they put them all together.